Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Still You podcast, the podcast for people who don't like being told what to do, which means today is definitely for people like myself. You know who you are. And the ones who think every group project needs a commander, a leader. Every rule is absolutely optional, and every opinion feels like it deserves some sort of passionate counterpoint. We're diving into why you have to be in charge even when you don't want to be, and why vulnerability feels like an ambush, why your resting leadership phase makes people just a little bit nervous. So grab your emotional arm. Nope. You're setting that at the door, leaving that at the door for today, at least for the next hour, please, because today we're talking about the powerhouse, the protector, the walking don't test me sign, the Enneagram Type 8. Don't worry, guys. This is not a takedown for our 8s. You are safe here, so no one's trying to control you except for me, but only for the next hour. So deal with it. So if you haven't figured out by now, yeah, I'm an 8. I'm actually out of breath. You'll find out why. But yes, this is my episode for my, yeah. Oh, I'm so excited. Okay. If you are an 8, male or female, know an 8, dating one, probably divorced from one, this is the episode for you, babes, or for you to share. Please do so, by the way, because I don't know how often I repeat this. We're trying to do something here, but also share, because 8s are some of the more outwardly difficult types. I hate to admit it, but we need help. We need you guys. We need support, even if it doesn't seem like it. And yeah, because this is me, the Type 8 episode, I will say that if this episode feels a little bit biased, girl, I can't help it. It's naturally the one I know the most about, and I want to just vomit all of that knowledge onto my other 8s out there. Mainly, I will say, mainly to my female 8s, because yes, we are the most misunderstood type of the Enneagram. Why? Because we have a masculine personality with titties. All right, let's get into it. Can't believe I said titties. But first, again, rate and review, share, support the dream, turn this into my full-time gig, because right now I'm busting these out while I can. It's the holiday season, but once the new year hits, we're going to be grooving much more regularly. So DM or email me if you want to, if there's something like specific you want to hear, or like a good subject you want me to cover, or if you actually want to learn more about your type or learn maybe what your type is, you can schedule a one-on-one sesh with me and have it featured as an episode as well. All you have to do, there has to be a better way to do this, but for now, just go to the show notes. There's a Calendly link that you have to copy and paste into your browser just to get the scheduling thing. But okay, now let's get into it. Now let's start with our basics, the core blueprints of our Type 8s. Do you know that friend who refuses to let anyone mess with their people? Like someone insults you at the bar, and that friend is like, "Who said that? Who hurt you? Point them out right fucking now." That's an 8 in action. See how effortlessly I did that? Oh, it felt so natural. It's that protective instinct, locked and loaded. They are the people who say, "Don't worry, I've got it handled, baby cakes." And then 5 minutes later, they fired off 6 emails, a couple calls, and a Yelp review, whatever it is. They'll take care of it. 8s are not here for passive aggression. They are here for directness, honesty, and loyalty. Okay? Type 8s are bold, assertive, and protective, and allergic to being controlled. Their internal motto is something like, "Only the strong survive, and preferably, I'm in charge of that." So if you've ever met someone who walks into a room and immediately changes the energy, like the air suddenly feels charged with purpose or maybe intimidation, it's probably an 8. 8s value strength, autonomy, and truth. Think Chris Hansen taking down child predators as a full-time job. I'm obsessed with his TikTok account. I wouldn't be surprised if he was an 8 wing 9 or even a type 1. Either one. Those are good guesses though. I love him doing the Lord's work out there. But a type 8's basic desire is to be independent and to protect themselves and others from harm, and then to determine their own course in life. And guess what their biggest fear is? Being controlled, vulnerable, or betrayed. So their super ego message says, you are good or okay if you are strong and in control of your situation. They have a built-in radar for power dynamics. So they can walk into a room and instantly sense, all right, who's in charge here? Do I trust them? If not, I got this. So also, 8s do not wait for permission. They are permission, which is so funny to me because one of my favorite sayings is don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness. Because damn, you cannot rely on other people or wait on other people to finally make a decision. Like, at the heart of the 8's worldview is a belief that the world is a tough place and you've got to be tough to survive it. So they build their armor, big, shiny, emotionally bulletproof armor. When we dive into like the childhood dynamics of all our types, a lot of this, especially for the 8, will start to make sense. So stay tuned for that. But the twist in all of this, underneath all of that armor, I can't tell you how true this is. So please trust me, even if you're an 8 and haven't gotten there yet. But underneath all that armor is the most tender, gooey cinnamon roll of a heart. 8s love deeply and fiercely and protectively. You might not see it right away because vulnerability to them feels like exposure to danger. And I get how that sounds ridiculous and kind of too primal in today's world, but hold on, we're going to be talking more about that. So, instead of an 8 saying I love you, an 8 might say, did you eat? You have better have eaten, or I swear to God, if you skipped lunch again, which roughly translates to, yo, I love you, and I just can't bear the thought of you being hungry or not taking care of yourself, so I'm here to help you, right? I think I shook the desk on that one. But it's so accurate because I've seen people actively like react to that aggressive love when I say things in that manner or like that. And I always have to remind myself to soften my tone, soften my approach. But if you tell an 8 that, that's like their kryptonite because they are the rugged individualists of the Enneagram. And God forbid they change to make other people comfortable. Okay. And that's not what this is. Please trust me. It took me a long time to realize that I can maintain who I am, my autonomy, my individuality, and be able to operate in the world so it responds better to people. And people around me that I actually care about aren't intimidated or walk on eggshells around me. Okay. Put another pin in that. Get your pins out. There's a lot of pins going in on this episode. But so they call the type 8 the challenger for a reason because of all the types. 8s love a good old test of strength, right? Whether it's pushing themselves to the limit or pushing others to rise higher. They thrive on intensity and forward motion, right? 8s are magnetic, magnanimous, they're bold and built with a kind of stamina, both physical and psychological, that can rally others to follow them into just about anything, whether it's like launching a business, rebuilding a community, running a family, waging war, or negotiating peace. Hopefully it's the peace one. But they have an incredible reservoir of willpower and life force energy, and they feel most alive when they're using it in some way or another to just move the needle, to shape the world around them, and to protect the people that they love. So that drive to control their environment isn't just about dominance, okay? It's also about safety. If they're in charge, they can't be blindsided or betrayed, right? And at their core, eights have one primary rule: no one controls me, right? Their deepest fear is being at the mercy of someone else's power, whether it's emotional, physical, sexual, social, or financial. Maybe not all of those, but maybe some, but it's likely all of them at some point in their lives. I know me, I've calmed down a lot on all that. But financial one is still kind of big for me. It's just ego at this point. It's like, I'm fine. I'm safe where I'm at. Love my partner. We're good. But we're not here to talk about me. Oh, wait, we are. I'm just kidding. But yeah, so eights make sure to stay strong, independent, and in control of their world for as long as humanly possible. And you'll find eights leading in every arena, whether like some general in the army, gardeners, CEOs, a mom or dad, activists, right? Whatever they do it with presence and authority, leaving their unmistakable stamp on everything that they touch. And so, as the true rugged individualists of the Enneagram, eights truly do stand apart because they want to. Eights, they value independence and refuse to be indebted to anyone. Social norms, optional. Approval, not necessary. They have a way of charging ahead, fearless of judgment and unmoved by the disapproval of others. Even when they know others find them intimidating, they'll keep going. They don't give a shit. They're driven by a kind of steely determination that can inspire people or maybe instill a little, healthy fear, if you will. But eights are usually kind of this kind of reminds me of our type threes too, but eights are usually powerhouses of productivity. They're people who can outwork, outlast, and outmaneuver just about anyone. But sometimes, obviously, this drive comes at a cost. They get so focused on doing that they forget about feeling. And while they're out there conquering the world, the people closest to them will start to feel like ignored, right? Why wouldn't they? Which really can confuse the eight. And here's why: because in their mind, they're like, I'm working my ass off for you. And how are you not impressed? Or how does that not make you feel loved? Right? Whatever it is, that might sound a little familiar to some of you and it might sting. I don't care. Get over it. So when this happens, eights often feel misunderstood, right? Like their good intentions are invisible to the people that matter to them. So what do? They have a couple choices, but typically what they'll do is they'll pull back even more. And underneath that tough, unshakable exterior, there's usually a whole lot of hurt that they'll never admit to, ever. Ever. It's a fortress up there. Because vulnerability feels like kryptonite. Even something as small as getting sick can feel like losing control, which is so true. I remember when I was like in my mid-20s, which was my more average level of health era, I refused to let my body win. There was a time where I had strep throat 7 times 1 year and I never missed work. Fever, swollen glands. I had like this gland here, this lymph node was as big as a golf ball for a little while and I still went into work. But I'd pretend, do everything I needed to do to look and appear fine because, and I'd hide it really well because God forbid someone think I couldn't handle the workload that day and send me home. Weakness? That's not me, baby. Even if I was a walking petri dish, I was not going to miss work. Granted, there were some other reasons at play as to why I worked my ass off. But I would have honestly been okay and survived whatever I was going through if I just stayed home and rested. All right, enough about me. But So, underneath all that strength is a deep fear, the fear of rejection or humiliation, or maybe both. Whether it's a breakup or getting fired or just simply being criticized in some way, eights protect themselves the only way they know how, by rejecting others first. It's the emotional version of, you can't fire me, I quit, right? Been there. The problem is that defense makes it almost impossible to let love in. So cliche. Because love requires vulnerability, and vulnerability feels like danger. Mm-hmm. So the more eights armor up, the more sensitive they actually become to any challenge or slight. Even a small disagreement can feel like a threat to their authority or their self respect. So they shut down even harder. And I've been there. When my marriage was falling apart, I was a total shell of myself. I was stoic, ultra distant, and just planning my exit before he could make the first move. I don't think he ever would have, honestly. But all that to say, I've never been broken up with in my life because my ego couldn't handle it. Well, and probably still can't if I'm being honest with myself. But if something was going to end, I was going to see the end first and therefore end it first. Okay? You're going to beat me to the punch. Yeah. Anyway, but when eights are emotionally healthy, right, it's so beautiful and so powerful in the best ways possible. That same fire becomes fuel for leadership, creativity, and more courage, right? They don't bulldoze anymore. They build. They take initiative without crushing others. They lead with clarity, fairness, and their heart. Healthy eights are great, right? They have a grounded confidence that makes people naturally trust them. And they can make hard decisions as well. They can take the heat and still care about the well being of everybody involved. And when an eight is at peace, they don't just protect their world, they improve it. And that's when their power truly becomes life giving. So, for our triad, where do our eights land? Okay. Go back to the second episode if you don't know what triads are. Okay, I'm not going to explain it. But eights kick off our gut or instinctive triad, which are the eights, nines, and ones. Type 9 we'll talk about next episode, but we've already did the type 1. I decided to go in chronological order, I don't know. I just did. So what does that mean, this gut triad? These three types all react to life from the gut. They lead with instinct and try in all their own unique ways to keep the environment from, affecting them or throwing them off balance, right? And eights do it by dominating it. Nines, they just tune it out, which we'll learn about next episode. And type ones, as we have learned, do it by trying to perfect it, right? That is the key difference between those types. If you're kind of feeling like you're in that triad, that might help you narrow it down. Excuse me. Let me pause for a little minute. Okay, sorry. I had to take like a break. I have a new fancy smartwatch. My heart rate is like above normal. I need to like calm it down, take a sip of water. All right, where was I? All right, I was talking about the triads. Got it. Okay, so for eights have a raw, powerful connection to their instincts. It's what gives them that unstoppable drive and confidence. They don't always know why they're doing something or deciding on something. They just know it's the thing to do. And if it turns out to be the wrong decision or wrong move, well, they're going to deal with that later, right? And preferably by sheer force of will, right? Oh, Lord. It reminds me of like, because I got married really young. I got married at 19. And of course, like when you go through a divorce, that's when everyone's opinions are, coming out like, I should have warned you, I should have said something. And, of course, my parents were all like, I should have blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, like, I wouldn't have listened anyway. I would have done it. I needed to find out for myself. That's the kind of learner I am. And I feel like a lot of eights are like that as well. Like I just in my gut, even though it was wrong because I'm a child at 18 and I haven't experienced much of the world. We're not diving into that. But you see what I mean? Like, I even told my mom years later, I was like, it wouldn't have changed my mind. I would have gone through it anyway. Right. So, and now I learned so many lessons, so much from that I can move forward in such a healthier way. Right. But on the flippity flip, I'm going to touch on the arrows real quick. We're going to go into it, but I want to touch on it really fast. But the arrows for growth and then disintegration, like stress, those paths point toward the 5 and the 2. And I say this because from the 5, right? The 5 is in the head triad, the 2 is in the heart triad, the 8s are in the gut triad. So what a better place to be in than having those little arrows that can help you evolve in a much better way. So the 5 being oh Jesus, my cat just sneezed and it scared the shit out of me. Jasmine, oh my gosh, hold on. Okay, sorry about that. Her sneezes are super cute, but they come out of nowhere. All right. So as I was saying, the type 5 being in the head triad, the 8 can learn from then on how to slow down, to think things through and gather information before charging ahead. And on the flip side, from the type 2 in the heart triad, they can learn to tune into their emotions, which we're going to get into. They can tune into their own emotions as well as other people's emotions. So their power doesn't bulldoze their compassion, right? So, pro tip for my type 8, surround yourself with 5s and 2s, just the healthy ones, though. Okay. Trust me, that's a good move. That's smart. But out in the wild, 8s are usually the easiest people to spot. They've got presence, baby. You feel them when they walk into a room, but that same strength can make them a little tricky to deal with because getting their way often feels non-negotiable. Big emphasis on often. But, and it's a big but, when they are healthy, all that confidence and willpower comes from pure magic. Instead of trying to control everything, they channel that energy into building something really good. They use their power not just to protect themselves, but to transform the world around them in bold, lasting ways. Okay. That was a long intro. I don't care. So let's talk about the fun stuff first, because why not? And because also that intro section may have scared off the non-8s to ever encountering a type 8 ever again. If it sounds a little scary, it's not. But yeah, so a type 8 can be easy to spot, but a healthy type 8, that's a different story. They may not be as easy to spot in the wild. Okay, let's get into it. So, at their best, 8s are powerhouses of justice and protection, a deep sense of right and wrong, right? Like Chris Hansen and oh my God, Nancy Grace is a classic type 8. I know I'm not wrong about that either. She is my absolute favorite and always has the best one-liners that will just shut you up. I would be intimidated to like cross paths with her on some no. I've thought about that scenario so many times. Like, anyway, so these are the people who stand up to bullies. They defend the underdog and say what everyone else is afraid to say. It's my favorite thing in the world to do, solely because of people's reactions. It's so funny and kind of refreshing. But they're the kids in class who tell the teacher, yeah, that's not fair. But also not really me as a kid, because I was the youngest of all boys who were type A, like A as an apple, type A personalities. And my father as well, who is also a type 8, the number. Yeah, I wasn't speaking up much, right? You could probably guess as a woman how that affected me. But as an adult, I have learned to step into this part of my personality because an adult, let's say you're in a business meeting, they can call out the hypocrisy or something, right? Respectfully. Well, mostly respectfully. But healthy eights use their strength to empower others, not dominate them or bulldoze them. Key difference. They can look at you and just say, "Hey, girl, you've got power too. You can speak up. Use it. Use your strengths to advocate for yourself." Oof, love doing that. So they're courageous, decisive, and honest to the point of refreshing. You never have to wonder what a eight thinks because they'll tell you. Sometimes even if you didn't ask. Sorry. Eights are people of action and surprisingly sharp intuition. They don't just dream up the big old ideas, they make them happen. They've got vision and a deep satisfaction out of being constructive, both literally, like building a business, and then figuratively, like repairing their relationship after burning it down in a heated argument. But that's the magic of eights. Their creativity is practical. They love starting from scratch, turning chaos into structure, junk into potential, and they'll see like a garage full of garbage and somehow like see the business opportunity in it, right? And or they'll meet that little kid that everyone else has written off and then see a future CEO, right? They see potential in the dirt, right? Eights empower. That's their keyword and also their superpower, okay? They live by the saying, give a man a fish, he eats for a day. Teach him to fish, and he eats for life. Right? That's how the saying goes. You know what I mean? But most eights learn to fish by sheer necessity because they've been doing it solo since day one. Also, honor is a big deal as well. Their word means something. When an eight says, "You have my word," that's as binding as a contract to them. They appreciate directness and they also expect it in return. I know that's hard, but they don't crumble if you don't like their honesty. Okay. They might just roll their eyes and think, you're a loss. So, and respect is absolutely central for eights, both giving and receiving it, right? Um, they feel injustice like a gut punch. And can't stand watching someone get steamrolled. Oh, I hate that. They'll step in, they'll speak up, or throw themselves into the middle of a mess if it means protecting somebody who's vulnerable. That's that soft heart under all of that armor. It's there, I promise. But here's the thing, control isn't actually the goal for a healthy eight. What they really want is influence, the kind that changes things for the better. The difference is ginormous. True power doesn't come from forcing outcomes or muscling people into submission. It comes from inner strength, from being grounded and unshakably yourself. And healthy eights realize that by trying, no, healthy eights realize that trying to control everything is just another prison, right? Real freedom, that's when the eight trusts the world enough to unclench their fists and deal and lead with strength that's steady, not loud. That's key. So I kind of spoiled it earlier, but circling back to the little arrows for our type eights. So when an eight grows and starts to really level up in their life and they move toward that heart space of the type two, okay? And I gotta say, type twos are basically the emotional support animals of the Enneagram. Sorry, guys. Actually, they love it. Who cares? The type two, a healthy type two, really represents the eight's inner child, that innocence that was once lost, that part of us that actually cares, and dare I say, loves love. I'd take a bullet for my type twos. Seriously. But here's the thing. Eights don't need to add anything to become more loving, trusting, or open. It's already there. They just need to reconnect with their heart and remember how much they actually care about people. Kids and pets are usually the ones who easily sneak past the eight's defenses. Like, I don't know, I can be all tough and mighty out in the world, but the second I'm around my cats, I'm just a different person. But the kids and pets, they bring out this protective instinct that says, you're just so small and little and innocent, and I will destroy anybody who messes with you. It's beautiful and terrifying all at once. It's just chaos. But to really embrace that big-heartedness, eights have to do something scarier than leading armies or starting businesses. They gotta trust. Trust something beyond their own grit and control. And that means lowering the walls that they've spent a lifetime building, because underneath all that armor, there's still that sensitive little kid who decided, I'll never get hurt again. And that part never really dies. It just waits for permission to come out and breathe again. Okay. And when eights integrate onto this side, they become incredible leaders, the kind who lead with both power and compassion. They have respect for people's boundaries and their own personal limits as well. They start realizing that rest isn't weakness, it's wisdom. They work hard, but they also know when it's time to eat something that's not just a protein bar and then actually relax. They choose things that restore them instead of just chasing the next adrenaline spike or overindulging, right? And when that happens, their strength becomes magnetic, not intimidating. Okay. So next segment, we should have a little swoosh, little sound effect. But yeah, so like every type, there's a shadow side. This is where it can get scary for people. For the eights anyway. Or the opposite. Anyway, so imagine an eight in a relationship. I'm about to expose myself here. Their partner can say something like, hey, I feel like you're not really hearing me. And the type 8 will respond something like this. They'll go, oh, I hear you. I just don't agree. Boy, the times I've busted out that line. But when a type 8 is pressed, they might just shut down emotionally. Not because they don't care, okay? But because emotional exposure feels like walking into a battlefield unarmed, right? Which is true. I tend to shut down personally versus just exploding with rage. My rage comes out in other areas of my life in a healthy way. Put a pin in that, because we got to talk about the 8's anger problems. Sorry. No, I'm not sorry. So it's not that 8s don't have feelings. It's that their feelings are so intense, hence the rage. They keep them locked behind a steel door with a do not enter sign, right? So when 8s feel unsafe or betrayed, their protective instincts can turn into control instincts, right? They might get domineering, aggressive, even more confrontational, and they push instead of connect. And all that beautiful strength that's meant to protect and help others can start to hurt the people around them. And at their worst, they be bulldozing. Hello, daddy issues. Oh, geez. Yeah, my dad's an 8, like I said, but don't worry, we're not opening that can of worms right now. But their truth-telling becomes steamrolling. Their leadership becomes my way or the highway, okay? But what is really going on underneath all that? This is where curiosity really needs to come in. And with anything, if you're in a disagreement with no matter what type they are, curiosity is a game changer in those moments. So, moving on. What's really going on underneath all that steamrolling and bulldozing and my way or the highway? For the 8, it's usually fear. Okay? Fear of being weak, fear of being blindsided, fear of depending on someone who could just let them down. And instead of admitting the fear, because that's vulnerable, they double down on power. 8s move through life with this deep instinct to protect themselves, which can quietly morph into a fear of depending on anyone, right? For an 8, needing help can feel like losing power, like you've just handed someone the keys to your emotional fortress. So they go into battle mode, always ready for resistance. Life starts to feel like one long wrestling match with people, systems, or traffic lights, which is so counterintuitive because the more you're ready for resistance, the more you're going to get it. Think about that. But as long as the 8s are calling shots, they can breathe. But the kicker is like nobody's actually self-sufficient, okay? Even the most independent of 8s, they need people to build, to grow, and to thrive. And if an 8 could actually step back and look at their life objectively, they'd probably see that they're already deeply connected to and dependent on a lot of people. But that realization can trigger their 2 big fears. And what are those? Dependency and betrayal. So instead of acknowledging it, they double down on the I'll just do it myself narrative and end up shouldering everything. Oh, what's that character, the Disney one, Encanto? What's her name? The super strong one. That's such a really, really beautiful depiction of what we're talking about right here. How she's just like carrying everything and like she's just really tired at the end of the day and scared of being weak. Ugh, that one got me. But I just went off script there. But yeah, so they end up shouldering everything, the type 8. They convince themselves they're the only ones pulling the weight and that if just others worked as hard as they did, the world would run a lot smoother. Now let's talk about boundaries, okay? Because that word might as well be tattooed on the bicep of every single type 8. Boundaries are their oxygen. Like, I am not joking. 8s love straight talk and get suspicious the second someone starts sugarcoating something, beating around the bush. And when other types start tiptoeing around feelings, 8s are like, bruh, spit it out already. Land the plane. Meanwhile, other people are usually often stunned by how blunt we can be, but that intensity is really about safety here. They need to know where the lines are. That's and what's okay, what's not okay, where you end, and where they can begin. And trust me, please trust me on this, 8s figure out boundaries the hard way by pushing them. It's not personal. It's just data collection. Okay, please understand that. They test the limits to see how strong the connection is, right? If I'm in a relationship, I love, in a way, it sounds really toxic, but going toe to toe with somebody on something deepens my connection with them. Because I'm like, can they really stand up to this? Do they have a little heart of their own? Can they muscle this around? That's what the 8 does. This is one of the harder lessons I have learned in my life and still struggle with from time to time. I thought that being open about, like, I would tell people, hey, I need to ask you certain questions, what I thought were the right questions, so I know where your boundaries are. And I would be very explicit and clear. And so I'm asking what I thought were the right questions to figure out where this line is. But they often, one, didn't know or thought it was some other thing. So they may have answered my question, but realized they were wrong because I found it for them. It gets me in trouble so much. At least it did in the past. But that's the 8 way. We find out where the line is by accidentally stepping over it. So for my non-8 listeners, pro tip, find the strength, please find it somewhere in you to be equally as direct with them. That will shut them up. I promise you, if you can just be like, hey, that's not okay because of XYZ and don't treat me like that ever again. They'll be like, oh, good to know. Thank you. Like you're not shaking them. You're not hurting them. They'll have a new higher respect for you and your boundary. God, please trust me. I'm not joking. But because of their communication style, they can come off as like angry, critical, or just like argumentative in a way. And part of the problem is that they don't know their own strength and use more energy than necessary for too many things. And a good test of this, like, tomorrow or whatever you're doing right now, see, are you writing something? How tightly are you gripping that pen? Or how much grip do you have sweeping the kitchen? Or are you clenching your jaw for no goddamn reason, right? Is it necessary to have that much tension for what you're doing? Probably not. And that applies to how you approach life, people, and conversations. You can soften the tension and still be yourself. But the more unhealthy, that's not that kind of but, moving on, but the more unhealthy and insecure a type 8 is, the more likely they will be to aggressively assert themselves. Ironically, creating more resistance and less cooperation in others. So, on our diagram, the stress arrow for 8s points to 5, which is, we already mentioned. So what does that mean in real life, though? Well, even the most aggressive, assertive, take charge 8 can only push their usual problem-solving tactics so far before things start to feel too much for them. When life piles on, deadlines are there, or people won't cooperate, the 8 can hit a wall, and that's when they go to that 5. In other words, they retreat, hermit, they strategize, they buy more time and gather information, and they recharge those batteries before diving back in. And during these stress moments, 8s can turn into solitary figures. They'll spend hours holed up thinking, reading, plotting, and generally just brooding over how to handle everything without losing that edge, right? They demand privacy and space, which they see as essential for regaining control. Think of like the evil guy in their little den. I should have thought of a fun character for that example. But like the type 5, stressed 8 can become hyper-focused on their plans and projects. They might seem quieter, more withdrawn, almost unrecognizable to anyone used to their really bold, passionate, and confrontational energy. And honestly, that sudden detachment can be a little disconcerting because one minute they're leading and taking the charge, and the next, they're off in their own mental fortress plotting their next move. I remember when my marriage was falling apart, people would be around me and they're like, Kayla, they didn't recognize me. It was just, I'm sure you've encountered people like that too. But yeah, so I could keep going on and on with all this stuff, just like with all the other types. It's hard to know when to stop. But future episodes, we'll dive deeper into these shadow types or shadow sides, okay? So quickly, let's talk about our wings. This adds the absolute flavor profile for any type. And for the type 8, your wings are 7 or 9. Not literally one or the other. You can be a little fluid, but you tend to like lean more toward one side typically. But so the 8-wing 7, I am not the 8-wing 7, but I relate to it a lot. And if I'm out on vacation, yeah, this is your girl. But these 8s are extra fire. They're bold, energetic, fun, and a little reckless. Picture the action hero with like a business plan or something like that. 8-wing 7s say things like, rules are just suggestions, right? They want to make things happen now. And they've got the charisma to make people follow and make it happen. They're the let's build an empire kind of 8s. High energy, passionate, and magnetic. Yes, queen. Downside, though, they can bulldoze people and burn out super fast. Think Tony Stark. This is what he reminds me of that. The 8-wing 9 is our bear. This is where I'm at. The 8 with the chillest vibe. And I'm not tooting my own horn. These are actual facts, guys. Seriously. These 8s are calmer, steadier, a little more grounded, still strong, but with a quiet, steady power like a mountain. Not a storm. They're more patient, more diplomatic, and a little bit harder to read. So think of them as the gentle giant version of the 8. But when they're unhealthy, they can become stubborn or really passive aggressive, like a volcano that's calm until it ain't. So like the 8-wing 7s, they can walk into a room and be like, let's start a revolution and get margaritas after. Hey! Which, that sounds awesome. But the 8-wing 9 can walk and be like, all right, let's keep the peace, but don't test me. So accurate. All right, so our type 8s, we love to move forward, right? We need action steps. What now? What can we do to actually help our 8s grow and become better people? Because for all of their strengths, the journey for the 8 isn't about more power. It's about softer power. Some of these practices are from my favorite book, The Wisdom of the Enneagram. So first off, you're not going to like it. Practice vulnerability. I know. I said it again, and I'm not going to stop. Vulnerability, it ain't weakness, guys. I know it's cliche to say that in today's world, but it's courage. For an 8, saying I'm hurt or I need help, it might feel like climbing Mount Everest barefoot, okay? But every time they let their guard down, they make space for real intimacy, okay? Start small if you have to. Instead of controlling every outcome, try trusting somebody with a piece of your heart or your to-do list. Again, I know it sounds cliche to get in touch with your feelings, but it's so helpful for our 8s. Rage or anger typically is the very first emotion a type 8 has. If you find that they have a short fuse. So it can, so it's usually like the first, I lost my train of thought. Rage or anger typically is the very first emotion an 8 has because it scares off what's hurting them, right? So I implore you that the next time you feel your blood boiling and you're about to explode, not joking, literally count to 10. Take a step back. Let that anger and that rage come and go like a wave in the ocean. And ask yourself, once that, you get to 10 or something, what then? What are you feeling now? What's the next emotions that you're starting to feel? Are you hurt, sad, frustrated? Knowing the real emotion in these moments will project you so much further down your path of growth. It's incredible. And then especially if, in those moments you're arguing with your spouse and you can say, sorry, exploded. Sorry about the anger. This is what I'm really feeling. Oh, talk about a game changer. Seriously. But that kind of vulnerability lets others know that they matter, okay? And that you actually care about them. I'm not saying you should walk around with your heart on your sleeve, okay? Ew. But denying your hurt or acting out in anger is never, ever the solution, okay? Next, notice your intensity. We touched on this. 8s don't realize how big their energy is. I have to remind myself often, and other people remind me of it too. Sometimes 8s can think it's about them, they're just being honest, but others feel like they've been hit with like a truth grenade, right? You can still say what you want to say. Just practice softening the delivery. The message can be just as strong without the boom, okay? You're not changing who you are to accommodate the feelings of others, okay? Alter your body language, your tone, and gracefully deliver what you have to say. I learned very young that I would speak in like a factual way that had people being like, fuck you. Like, I don't care what you're saying. Like, they just wouldn't hear. I want what I was saying to be absorbed and considered. So I figured out this little trick. It's so funny. The littlest changes to your vocabulary can have a huge difference. So I started being like, I read somewhere, or I saw this TikTok video that said XYZ, blah, blah, blah. I'm lying out my ass because I may have seen it on TikTok or I may have read it somewhere, but I don't remember that. I'm just softening the delivery and being like, you know what? Like, and what does that tone sound like? It's curiosity of like, what do you think about this? Versus just being like, that ain't true. XYZ, this and that fact, okay? But that the littlest little changes, man, I'm telling you. But also, moving on. 8s, work hard and play hard. Amen. That glass of wine is going to taste good. Guess what? So does the rest of the bottle. So question your need for intensity here. Where does that come from? What would happen to you or your life if it were a little less intense? For me, it came from being the youngest child of a big family and the only girl, and I had to be loud and I had to be really big just to get the simplest accommodations. Trust me, I had the best childhood. I wouldn't change it for the world. But next, you're not going to like this one either. But grief work is extremely helpful for our 8s. We're not the kind of people to sit around feeling sorry for ourselves for too long, right? But if you are suffering, it is so important for you to find constructive ways of grieving your losses and your hurts. That tough shell of yours is there for a reason. So it might be time to explore what some of those reasons are. In my growth journey, I remember having a lot of really big shower cries, crying in the shower, and allowing myself to feel something from situations that happened way long before that, right? And letting it actually affect me before, and therefore it's like, I'm relieved of them. The bucket's empty. The shoulders are lighter, okay? Next, find your inner circle. It ain't gonna be big. 8s generally have a really hearty sense of camaraderie and enjoy really good times with others, but that's not the same thing as intimacy, okay? Find your inner circle. People that you can really trust and those you can really talk to about what's going on with you or what you're struggling with, right? I have an inner circle, and then I have even more of an inner circle of those who I can truly like word vomit onto without thinking, and they hear me and they absorb it. It's not too much for them, right? And they do it without judgment. And so if you have someone like that, I dare you to open up a little bit more, or to someone that you feel like would be a good candidate for this. And don't presume that they don't want to hear about your struggles or feelings, okay? Okay. Lastly, let's take a look at how you handle the idea of rejection. Do you catch yourself expecting people not to like you? Ugh, I've met people like that. Oh, those fuckers. Or, sorry. um, hey, you know what? We've all been there in some way, probably. But do you catch yourself expecting people not to like you, or do you act in ways that try to dodge rejection before it happens? For the type 8s, this underlying fear often fuels that sense of being on guard or alone. And if you're not careful, it's eventually what sparks your anger. Counterproductive, right? We all get angry or a little hateful when we feel repeatedly rejected. But the kicker here is that sometimes, hear me out, the signals that you're sending out to others, your intensity, your testing of boundaries, your I don't need anyone energy, can read as rejection to the people around you. Not because you actually mean it, but because your own fear and self projection gets projected outward. Okay. Basically, you might be scaring people off while trying not to get hurt. Classic 8 move. And this leads us back to the vulnerability issue. The good feelings that you want are only going to touch you to the degree that you allow yourself to be affected. I'm going to say that again because I don't think you heard me. The good feelings that you want are only going to touch you to the degree that you allow yourself to be affected. Think about that. Chew on it. All right. All right. My fearless, opinionated, and beautifully overqualified 8s. We did it. You made it through an entire episode without taking over the mic because you couldn't. But I'm impressed. You got this far, and give yourself a little pat, okay? But in all seriousness, if you're an 8, hear me when I say this, okay? You don't have to hold the world up by yourself. You don't have to be the strongest person in every room. Your power doesn't disappear when you soften, it expands. You don't have to walk into a room at the level 10. You can walk in there at the 4 or the 3 and still be who you are. And let people in. Let yourself rest. Let someone else drive for once, even if it's to the grocery store. Because when you stop guarding your heart like a fortress, that's when your real strength shows up. It's the kind that heals, not just conquers, okay? And to the rest of you, if you love a type 8, just remember behind all that intensity is the world's most loyal protector who would burn down a building, a village, a city, the world for you lovingly. But again, if this episode hit home, send it to your favorite 8 or the person you're slightly afraid might actually be one. If you think so, you're probably right. And always remember, you're not broken. You're just still you, okay? See you next time, friends. Try not to start any coups before then, all right? Peace out.